on my mind for a while now. Feel like we've been lying for a while now. Your body shine like gold and I can't help when I touch you. Waiting on my soul, wears you down.
Good evening.
Let it go, stuck around too long.
Welcome. This is the Dominance Academy. I am your host, Mr. Justin. I think I should just start calling myself Professor J, because my main started calling me Professor, just kind of joking around, and I might just roll with that. I mean, I don't have a PhD, but whatever. Professor J. Yeah, one of my martial arts teachers, he went by professor, but he was not, he was, he had no doctorate or whatever. Anyways, so yeah, welcome. Tonight we're going to be going over how modern life, stress, cortisol, all that stuff affects the behaviors of women. Let me just check my sound here, make sure everything's golden. But yeah, we're going to be looking at that stuff and how it affects the way they think, their arousal, and how that might affect power dynamics. So before we start off with that, I'm going to just randomly open up the Codex of the Sovereign Order. This is one of my books here, and I'm going to read you a bit from this. This is from the passage of chapter 5, the flame and the shadow. And the verse 1, the fire that burns without consuming. I'm not going to read the entire verse, but I'll just read like the latter portion of it. When the flame burns clean, she yields deeper. When his needs no longer trembles with insecurity, her surrender sharpens. When his passion is not a plea but an axis, she feels the safety to open fully. Her obedience responds not to the heat alone, but to the discipline behind it. Thus the fire becomes sacred, not because it's fierce, but because it's governed, not because it consumes, but because it warms without destroying, not because it dominates her, but because it masterfully dominates him. Thus is the 25th teaching. The flame is power, only when the vessel is strong. He who governs his fire becomes the heat she can trust. He who cannot becomes the danger she must guard against. And this is right in alignment with what I talk about often when it comes to lust. And I was thinking about this as I was walking my dogs today, because there was some other parallel thing that came up. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just like lust. Oh, my dog. Yeah. So we were walking, and I've got this big, like almost, 100-pound pit bull mix. It's a big white guy, right? And we were walking, and I've got this smaller, like wolf-looking type of dog who's only like 15 pounds. And we were passing the bodega that's near my place, and every bodega, as you know, has a bodega cat. It's like a New York thing, and so the cat just happened to be sitting right there in the doorway. And my dog, Louis, he's the big guy, he sees the cat, and just immediately his instincts kicked in, and he was pulling so hard on the leash that it was basically choking him out, because I use a dual collar with him. He's got like the standard like fabric choker collar that just cinches around his throat. And then I've got a poker collar. So it has like these metal tines that kind of poke into his neck. So I use both of these. And he was basically willing to choke himself out to get at that cat. That's how strong his instinct and his desire was. And I was like, holy shit, this is just like dudes who have no control over their lust. They have no control over their sexual desires. They're just like Louis, and seeing that pussy standing there in the doorway. And he was willing to cause himself harm in order to get what he wanted. And this is basically what simps do. This is what nice guys do. They will do things and say things and think things that cause themselves, that's a detriment to themselves, just to get closer to pussy, just to get at that goal. And this is basically what the passage was about. Towards the ends there, because there's something unsettling that a woman can pick up on when when she can sense that you're not in control of yourself, that what she has, the cat in the doorway, is in control of you, is in control of the dog. Like, he wasn't consciously thinking any of those things. It was just pure raw instinct. I gotta chew on that small animal. I gotta kill it. I gotta eat it, or at least chase after it. And so, like, on one end, it's like, sure, it feeds the ego. I'm sure that happens. And she's like, oh, wow, this guy really wants me, or whatever. But like, so do like 100 other men, right? So it's not that special. Um, but the ego doesn't pick and choose. But on the other hand, there's something unsettling about that, about looking at him, at this man who clearly you have control over, you have some sort of influence over, and that's not sexy. Like, that's not sexy at all for a woman to come to that realization, that understanding that she has some kind of power over you. And this is not something that turns them on. This isn't something that they're wishing and hoping for. This isn't something that is in their fantasies. Okay. This Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on with my exposure here. Oh, this is a little bit better. There we go. Um, so yeah, it's like, in their fantasies, they're not thinking about, or if you read romance novels, which you should be, uh, the main character, like the main guy that's in the story, he doesn't act this way. He's almost indifferent to her beauty and things like that. He's not just, you know, taken by his passion. Maybe in the older ones, like the Harlequin press ones, where there's like Fabio on the cover. But these more modern erotica novels, it's not like that. Um, and typically, she's a challenge too. She's not just like falling into his arms because, like, oh my gosh, you're so masculine and adventurous, and she just turns into a puddle. Usually, there's a little bit of friction in between them, and girls like that, because when things are too on the nose, when things are just too perfect, it's not that great, right? It's more sexy when there is this little bit of like gameplay. And you can see this in like even non-erotic movies, like the romance comedies, where the two grown-ups first encounter each other and they hate each other's guts. It's like such a trope, where these a man and a woman, they get assigned to, like, they work for the same company, and they're now made teammates working on the same project. And the way they go about doing things, it just annoys the hell out of each other, and they can't stand each other. And then as things progress, they end up liking each other, and then it turns into a romance, right? So there's something to be said about allowing yourself to not be nice, but also not in the sense of like being mean, but to just allow yourself to be natural. And from what I've experienced is that girls can be very annoying, and it's quite all right to sit with that and express that. Right? Maybe not outright and saying, "Hey, you're annoying," but maybe that as well. Like, there's no real rules about it. But the point is that you're not being this fake nice. I think you're so beautiful. Everything you say is acceptable. Everything you do is acceptable. Everything that you just comes out of you, everything that you are, is acceptable. Like, that's just it's like eating cake that has just too much frosting on it, and it just killed, like, the balance between the sponge and the cake, or the frosting is just way off. We've all been there, and you're just like, well, it's too rich. There's too much. Like, that's what a guy, like, fawning and being nice is like. There's no polarity there, right? So we're going to be getting into stress, right? Cortisol. The whole, like, phrasing cortisol has been popping up a lot in social media. Um, and both as like something serious, but also joking. Like, I've heard people joking around, like making fun of someone saying that they're like cortisol maxing. So, right. So, we're going to be talking about how stress, cortisol, and this crazy world, this modern world, are they're they're completely messing with how women are, how women function. Okay, like the ways in which chronic stress, elevated cortisol, and the demands of contemporary life, they impair sexual desire, and by extension, it reshapes how they engage with power dynamics in relationships. And like I said before, there's always power dynamics. It doesn't have to be something like I do, where it's very defined. It's very, I don't know, over the top as compared to regular people. There's always power dynamics, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. And stress, cortisol, um, the conditioning of modern life, it affects these things. Okay. So this isn't like speculation, right? This stuff has been tested. Sociologists, psychologists, endocrinologists, all sorts of shit. Okay. So the human, so we just kind of catch some people up if they're not familiar, all right, with the biology behind this. So the human stress response, it evolved from immediate threats. Okay. An animal trying to kill you or something like that, or some other, group of humanoids, trying to eat you or kill you, take your furs or what have you. So when danger appears, all right, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, so it's like this triple situation in the body, it activates. Okay. The hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland, which is right here, which promotes the adrenal glands to release cortisol. All right. And this hormone immobilizes energy, it heightens alertness, and it temporarily suppresses non-essential functions like eating and procreation. Okay. So in ancestral environments, this mechanism conferred several advantages. Okay. And reproduction could just wait until everything subsided, and now you can get back to fucking. All right. Because in stressful environments, you can look at the world, right? You look at the world around us, and people aren't having sex the way they were, like in the 80s and 90s, like in the 70s, 60s, even. As life got harder, the world kind of pushing in on you from many directions, it just kind of killed sexual desire. We can see it all around us. And so in the present era, all right, because we don't have saber-toothed tigers around us, it's not this big spike, is like a savage animal trying to kill you. It's smaller spikes. So long ago there was bigger spikes, but they were less frequent. Now there's smaller spikes, but they're much more frequent, and it shows up with opening up your opening up your phone in the beginning of the day and noticing you have 63 unread emails that came in overnight, right? Financial pressures, social media, commuting, and information overload, they maintain elevated cortisol levels, which is but it's not super high spikes, but it's just higher than baseline, but over weeks, months, years, maybe even decades. And chronic activation, it produces measurable consequences in the reproductive hormones. Okay, so cortisol and the sex hormones, which is estrogen, prolactin, so progesterone and testosterone, they share precursor materials. So notably, pregnenolone. So pregnenolone is a precursor that it's a precursor for estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. Okay, so sustained high cortisol, it diverts resources away from sex steroid production. So a process sometimes described as pregnenolone steal. So cortisol, when cortisol is flooding into the system, it starts affecting the that precursor. It starts affecting the pregnenolone, which then will cause domino effect to affect the production of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which are the things that make us want to have sex and want to procreate. So you see how there's a problem here. Okay. Um, so it inhibits gonadotropin releasing hormone pulses and from the hypothalamus, slowing that cascade, and that supports ovulation and libido, right? So basically, the more stress a woman has, and I would also say that the more poorly it's regulated or managed, the less horny she's going to be. Like even probably during her ovulation stage, okay, because there's going to be less of those biochemicals that are released during the ovulation stage than normal, right? Which and that's the period, if you don't know, is when women are most horny. Okay, when she really wants to get fucked bad, and not some nice romantic sex, but she wants to be fucked. Okay, and she wants to, her body wants to be impregnated. So, at least from like a subconscious and biological level. Um, so so you can see like how that's a problem, right? Stress is fucking with desire. So clinical data illustrates the effect, right? Women exposed to stressors during laboratory viewing of erotic material often showed reduced wetness, right? Wetness and arousal. So their skin wasn't as flushed, their heart rates weren't as raised, and so on, and lower scores on validated indices such as the female sexual function index. So they have like the sexual function index is like this whole system chart, and they can measure arousal, right? So that it was, all the markers were lower when the women were exposed to sexual material, but also stressors during that time. All right. So those whose cortisols declined during the session reported higher desire and satisfaction. Okay. So lower cortisol, lower stress reported greater wetness, greater arousal, and greater pleasure, I guess, like during orgasm. Okay. So daily diary studies confirm that higher subjective stress and salivary cortisol on any given day predict lower sexual desire and arousal on that same day. So the girl goes out, she's got her stressful day job, working at the fucking office, or working in her law firm, or working in her hospital, or wherever, like there's, every job's going to have stress to it. So, uh, so then when she comes home, that it doesn't just like turn off, right? All that stress is going to affect her body's ability to become aroused. And it's not like she doesn't want it, right? It's not like a conscious choice, like, oh, I don't want to have sex. Like most people enjoy sex. Okay. It's just that all of those stress chemicals have completely like cut off the arousal chemicals at their knees. So it's all fucked up. So I guess I say this for like maybe husbands: don't blame your wife. Just understand that and you don't have to like it, but just understands that there's real biochemical things happening here, right? That are affecting the way the woman is behaving. And then there's this part that's very interesting. So on the same day, with stronger associations in women than in men. So they did the same kind of studies with guys, and the male libido did not get affected by the cortisol, which is really interesting. So the guy can go and have a stressful day at work, come home, and still want to fuck. Just one more little notch that shows that we are different species. Okay, not different species, but we're not the same. Okay, yes, we're the same species. I misspoke. That we're just not the same. We're not the same type of human. Okay, we're different. All right, we're both humans, but we're both different kinds of humans, and that's okay, right? Like you put, like all across the board, we're put in like the same environments with the same metrics, the same stimulus, and the same like the means of measuring, and almost always it shows different shit going on with the outcomes. Anyways. So women diagnosed with hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is basically, a low libido disorder, frequently exhibited dysregulated cortisol patterns. So basically high cortisol, right? Blunting morning peaks, flatter diurnal curves, and reduce. I'm not even going to learn how to pronounce that. Dehydroepiandrosterone. I don't even know what that hormone is. Um, an adrenal androgen linked to drive and vitality. So, so testosterone in women, though present in smaller quantities than men, contributes to sexual motivation, confidence, and assertiveness. Right, and like this is, it's a it's a testosterone's a horny hormone. Okay, whether you put it in men or women, like or whether it gets like activated in men and women, it just that's what it does. So chronic cortisol, like regardless of where it is, it suppresses it. Okay. Declining estrogen reduces vaginal lubrication and tissue sensitivity. All right. So not only is she not getting as wet, the nerves there become desensitized. It's almost as if women weren't cut out for really stressful environments because their bodies are literally telling them, like, hey, we're just going to shut this stuff down. Like, the bodies are just perhaps too sensitive to these types of environments, and the body's reacting. It's just shutting down in some places. So progesterone production suffers, and the cumulative result is diminished spontaneous desire, slower responsive desire, and a sense that intimacy has become another obligation rather than a source of pleasure. And it's like, how many, if you have any married friends, like how many guys, how many husbands have said, I feel like my wife is having sex out of obligation. Like it's just another thing for her to do on the to-do list so that she can get it out of the way and move on to the next thing. And this is the case for a lot of husbands, a lot. Well, and wives who are experiencing this end of things. So it's common amongst many marriages, where things are stressful. Um, and you can see this, like if you got like if you got like side chicks, or you're just kind of like casually dating and things like that, it's very easy to keep things light, friendly, and super positive, right? Yeah, it's very easy. And it's very easy to keep things horny and happy and bouncy and all that shit because there's no responsibilities, there's no stress, there's really nothing weighing on anybody that affects the space in between the two people, right? Like you've got your life, she's got her life, and they're not intermingled, except when you meet up and maybe you talk a little bit, maybe you'll go on a date, maybe you'll fuck, and like that's it. So it's easy to keep things light and sexual and positive. Okay. So maybe that's what we should be doing. I don't know. All right. So career expectations place many women in high pressure roles while traditional domestic responsibilities persist. Okay. So it's not like just because everyone's working and developing careers that the things that we need to do at home just magically vanish. Unless you start making so much money that you are, hiring out to get these things taken care of, which most people are not. Okay. So let's see here. Modern environments amplify these biological vulnerabilities. Okay. Oh wait, no, sorry, I jumped too far ahead. So let's see here. Sleep disruption, common under chronic stress, compounds the problem by further elevating cortisol and lowering sex hormones. Inflammation from poor diet and sedentary behavior adds another layer of interference. So it's like bad sleep, not deep enough sleep, shorter sleep, which then you're going to eat bad foods. You're going to drink a lot of coffee. There's going to be inflammation. And then you've got a job that has you sedentary. So you're like sitting at a fucking desk, tapping away on a keyboard. Like that's like, it's just this perfect storm for like completely fucking up the a woman's desire, a woman's arousal and her libido. All of these factors, and it's doing it day after day after day. And then on the weekends, you want to forget about all that stuff and very quickly achieve like a stress-free state. So what do? Drink, smoke some weed, right? And it's like all of that stuff, that's going to compound it also. So modern environments amplify these biological vulnerabilities. Women report higher average stress levels than men across large surveys. Excuse me, citing mental load, the ongoing cognitive labor of managing households, schedules, and emotional needs, even when paid employment is equal. Career expectations place many women in high pressure roles, while traditional domestic responsibilities persist. Constant connectivity prevents genuine recovery. So we're talking about being on our laptops, being on our phones, and so on all day long. So it prevents genuine recovery. Blue light blue light that comes from phones, all right, exposure at night, processed foods, and limited physical movement sustain low grade sympathetic activation. Social comparison via digital platforms adds rumination and anxiety. Hormonal contraceptives and perimenopausal transitions introduce additional variables that interact with stress. So it's like basically just everything. Like everything that like if a woman's like living in a city, basically everything she's doing is fucking up her hormones and fucking up her libido. That's like almost everything. Unless she's taking very focused efforts to counteract all of this stuff, which is really hard. These changes do not remain confined to the individual. Female sexual desire is highly context sensitive. So, evolutionary pressures favored selectivity and responsiveness to cues of safety, resource availability, and partner investment because reproduction carries high costs for women. When cortisol signals persistent threat, the body downregulates desire. Intimacy feels risky rather than rewarding, and initiation declines. Enthusiasm wanes, and this shift alters relational power. Okay. So we've got like a world that's becoming increasingly more demanding financially. Everything's expensive. Like in New York right now, what is it? Unleaded gas is like $4 a gallon. And as we get closer to the summer, it's going to get even higher because it always jumps in the summer. But everything, okay. And so when one is feeling the stresses of survival, like I mentioned before, the cortisol shuts down reproduction because it's like, hey, that shit's not important. We need to focus on surviving now. Okay. We're in this world, and if we don't swim, we're going to fucking drown. And for many women, it feels like they're trying to prevent themselves from drowning every single day. And so you wonder, so this whole notion of like all these women are out here fucking, they're not. They're not. Maybe like older girls who are not of this particular generation, maybe now they're in their early 40s or something like that. Sure, they might be fucking. Maybe late 30s, they might be fucking. But mid 30s and younger, they're not. They're absolutely not. Not in the way like people were in the 90s or the 80s. Definitely not. Okay, because the women were not subjected to such stress levels that were literally shutting their bodies down. So, in relationships, desire functions as a key currency of attraction and influence. When a woman experiences sustained low desire, sexual frequency drops. Partners may interpret this as rejection, right? Well, men might interpret this as rejection, leading to withdrawal, pursuit pressure, or resentment on both sides. The women may feel depleted and critical, and the men may feel powerless and burdened. And polarity, the complementary dynamic of masculine direction and feminine receptivity, it gets completely eroded. And so studies on household labor division indicate that perceived fairness correlates with higher female relationship satisfaction and sexual interest. Okay, let me repeat that though. Perceived fairness, okay? There's also plenty of evidence that chore play does not get the man more sex. So someone who's reading this, they might misinterpret that of saying if the man does more in the house, it's going to reduce her stress and she's going to want more sex. And after working with tons of husbands over the years, that absolutely does not work. What's important here is to recognize the word perceived. Okay. Studies on household labor division indicate that perceived fairness correlates with higher female relationship satisfaction and sexual interest. Okay. So just understand that perception is the deal here, not what's actually happening. Yet many contemporary arrangements leave women carrying disproportionate invisible labor, sustaining cortisol elevation. All right. Again, it has to do with perception. Okay. Um, because well, I'm not going to get into deep about like what is like done on their own minds to facilitate. How do I explain this? So their own minds will create the scenarios in their heads that will create the cortisol, that will create higher cortisol production, and it's a result of not being under a man, not being within his containment, and not being within his guidance, because his presence and his influence can regulate that habit to create whatever sort of mental things going on that cause more cortisol production. So if it's just like a man and woman together or a husband and wife, and they're kind of in this like egalitarian scenario where she's not really being led by him or influenced by him, and she's not looking up to him, uh, then her mind is free to just do what it wants, right? Because it's independent. And what happens is it often doesn't veer into positive thinking. It doesn't veer into mental regulation, that sort of thing. It often veers into chaos and spinning things out of control and having overactive mental activity and overactive imaginations. And next thing you know, they're creating their own stress, right? Um, and a lot of guys will criticize this and say that women are just predisposed for being in a victim mentality, and that's kind of like it's correct, but it's incorrect. It's sort of like throwing a blanket on it, but with a slightly oversimplified title. But anyways, so let me get back in here. All right. Rose House of yeah, many all right. So broader patterns emerge at the social level. Okay, so that's just like the home level, the one I talked about. Then there's the social level, delayed partnership formation. So what's happening is like a lot of women, they're putting off marriage in their 20s and their 30s. A lot of women are aiming to get married in their late 30s and early 40s. Okay, there's lower fertility rates and increased reports of sexual dissatisfaction, and they align with rising chronic stress across populations. Okay. It's funny because we have the most technologically advanced society that we ever have in history, and we're also the most stressed out. So it's like, what gives here? Like, what good is it doing? Okay, so mating markets influenced by dating applications introduce choice overload and evaluation fatigue, further taxing stress systems. All right. Like I remember when I was in college, I took some courses in music. I took the history of jazz, which was a really fucking awesome course. And then I also took electronic music. And it was a creation, like it was like a music studio course. And this studio that we had was amazing. It was one of the few universities in the world that had the first ever synthesizer, and it basically looked like an operator's board where you can like take a plug and put the plugs in and like different things, and it would just create sine waves and square waves and brown waves. It had some of like the most famous and old synthesizers like ever created, plus the massive computer station, huge mixing board. And then what was loaded on the computer was Pro Tools. And if you've ever messed with Pro Tools, you can very quickly see that it's very easy to get lost in that software, because like to say that it has a lot of options is a massive understatement. Just with one feature, like let's say you wanted to put a little bit of reverb on a particular word, that someone was saying. You could sit there all day long fucking around with all of the different options just with reverb and come up with a dozen different ideas. Okay. So I was, we were all kind of prompted to make a song like by the end of the course, and I was completely overwhelmed. It was there was just way too many options, and I was basically like a deer in the headlights because I just there were too many tools to use. So basically, I just did the assignment at my place. I had some turntables. I had a very simple like beat machine. And I was using a Windows machine. What did I use? Cool Edit Pro. That was what it was called. Very, very simple sound editing software. And I made an awesome song. I passed the course well, and he liked it. He liked what I made, but I had to kind of keep it to myself that I did it in my place instead of using the school's studio because it was just too much. It was way too overwhelming. So yeah, so there's that. But so it's the same idea where having all of these options, these perceived options within the dating market, and be it like in your head or on social media or in dating apps, and it's turning into fatigue. It's turning into choice fatigue, and thinking, "Oh my gosh, I got to make a choice," but it's very difficult. and I experienced this also very recently when I went to Bogota. And fucking hell, man. Like on Tinder, for every left swipe, there was like 8 or 9 right swipes. And the right swipes were all 8s, 9s, and 10s. And I don't do that to girls. Like I don't like rate girls in terms of numbers, but I'm saying that for you guys just as like a reference, to give you an idea. Basically saying there's like 8 or 9 in a row of very attractive women for every 1 or 2 unattractive women on Tinder. And I was just like, holy shit. And I would say half of them were responsive, where he'd write back, hey, nice to meet you. Like very like friendly and open and like, asking about me and things like that. It's like, all right, cool. And it was just very easy to set up dates, very easy to go get some coffee, go get, which is not surprising. I mean, it's Colombia, right? So, or go get a cocktail or wine. And, yeah, just a totally different fucking experience than these like aggressive, fucking defensive, non-trusting American women. Um, Seriously, like this place is cooked. My main is not from here. My secondary is not from here. It's just fucking cooked. I'm sorry, fellas. but anyways, um, but even there, I kind of experienced that because I was like, oh, I like that. I like that one. And I'm like looking at my watch. I'm like, I don't have time to like, sure, I can set up a bunch of dates, but I only have time for a couple of them like in one day. Like I can't like fuck 6 women all at once. I mean, yeah, we could have like a little orgy and that'd be fun, but it's really not that feasible. So even in that situation, I felt this choice fatigue. All right. So um so mating markets, right, influenced by dating applications includes introduce choice overload and evaluation fatigue, further taxing the stress system. Right, women under chronic load may prioritize security-oriented strategies over passion-oriented ones. So that's basically saying they're going for the safe guy, right? Prioritizing the safe guy versus the passion, because while the passion is great, it actually adds to the stress, right? Like bad boys and guys who know how to fuck and like get in her head and all that stuff. Like that's exciting and all, but it actually adds to one's stress levels, which actually lowers the sexual drive. Interesting, right? So, so let me get back in here. Right. Or okay, so women under chronic stress load may prioritize security oriented strategies over passion oriented ones, or vice versa, depending on the context. The outcome is often reduced relational vitality rather than empowerment. Research consistently deserves note. right? Cross-sectional and longitudinal studies link higher chronic cortisol to lower genital blood flow despite intact subjective arousal in some cases, indicating a disconnect between mind and body. The dual hormone hypothesis suggests that elevated cortisol blunts testosterone's effect on dominance and motivation in both sexes. Women experiencing this report lower personal agency and confidence. Acute stress can occasionally heighten arousal in specific contexts, but the predominant pattern under modern conditions is suppression. Individual differences exist: genetics, relationship quality, trauma history, and age moderate outcomes, but the directional effect holds. So, and that's what I was talking about, like these having like big spikes every so often and tons of little spikes. So the big spikes, they like what I mentioned before, how it can be linked to arousal. That's because the fear and arousal are in a similar place. So the brain doesn't really know what's going on. Okay. Your eyes do, and like your prefrontal cortex, but the hindbrain and stuff like that, it doesn't know. Okay, like your hindbrain doesn't know that we're in 2026. Okay, it still operates under primal thought, primal order, primal conditions. Um, so like the thing is like this is kind of like why girls like scary movies. Okay, because it stimulates the same part of the brain as arousal. So if you ever want to like turn a woman on in a way that's not typical, is watch a scary movie together, like something that will scare her, because it'll arouse her, but in like a slightly different way. So solutions follow from causes rather than symptoms. Okay, so prioritize sleep of sufficient duration in total darkness. Engage in resistance training and outdoor activity to regulate cortisol and support hormone balance. Consume nutrient-dense foods, emphasizing protein, healthy fats, and micronutrients while minimizing processed items. This is all like basic stuff that we all know, but don't do. Establish boundaries against unnecessary obligations. In partnerships, clear communication about responsibilities and genuine rest periods can reduce mental load. Men benefit from providing decisive leadership and presence without adding pressure. Women benefit from protecting recovery time. Targeted interventions such as mindfulness practice, magnesium supplementation when deficient, or professional support for HPA axis dysregulation may assist, but they cannot substitute for environmental redesign. So all this stuff that I just mentioned is more so like coping, right? It's just doing what you must do to combat the changes from the environment. Okay, the best thing, right, but it's also the hardest, is basically to change the environment, right? Like I said, they cannot substitute for environmental redesign. Now that's going to be hard, but if you're a guy and you want to create something, like maybe you want a homestead, right? You want to not live in a city. You want to have like a house like away from shit, right? And you have visions of like your woman is there, children, animals. Maybe you're growing shit. Maybe you got livestock. I don't know, but it's really important to create an environment where there's less stress. And this is really important as a man, because if you are dating and so on, you don't want to come across as someone who is a creator of stress, right? And part of that is being such a guy, like not just projecting this image or trying to be this way, but actually being in a way where things just don't bother you. And it's magnetic to women. It can be almost intoxicating when they get this sensation from you that just shit doesn't bother you. Shit doesn't knock you off course. You know, I got a brief story about that, but let me finish this. So the essential insight is this: cortisol stress and cortisol do not merely produce fatigue or irritability. They biologically signal that conditions are unsuitable for reproduction and associated behaviors. So basically, fucking around, arousal, all the stuff that leads up to reproduction. Female desire diminishes accordingly. This change cascades into intimate power dynamics where mutual attraction and complementary roles weaken. Contemporary life, with its emphasis on perpetual productivity and minimized downtime, creates a mismatch between our um, between our physiology and our environments. Addressing the issue requires acknowledging these constraints rather than framing them as personal failings or social constructs to be overcome through willpower alone. Restoring balance is feasible. Individuals and couples who systematically lower chronic stress often report renewed desire and improved relational equilibrium. The process demands honesty about biology and trade offs. Modern progress has delivered undeniable benefits, yet it's also introduced costs to fundamental aspects of human functioning. Understanding the mechanisms of stress, cortisol, and desire equips us to mitigate these costs intelligently. So, yeah, but so like a lot of this is just like just dealing with it, like dealing with modern life. Um, and Yeah, I mentioned that with like just the modern developments and stuff. Okay. So what I've mentioned before many times about the BDSM lifestyle, and there's a number of studies that show that practitioners, like regular practitioners of BDSM, like especially those that are in committed relationships, they exhibited far less cortisol, far less stress in their relationships, and they showed much higher trust. Okay, because we push envelopes, we have conversations that are uncomfortable, like on purpose. It's like we really bring things out and bring the shadow into the light. It's just part of the process. It's part of utilizing the lifestyle as a means of personal development. And while at the same time getting into some very physically and sexually demanding things where pain can be pushed to a certain limit, pleasure can be pushed to a certain limit. Like, it's like how many orgasms am I gonna force her body to have? Like 10, 15, 20, over and over and over and over, right? And what that does to the trust matrix that's between us, the 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 bonding matrix between us, the release of stress, right? By having this buildup and then this huge release, and mixing in all sorts of emotions through the various types of communication, the praise or the degradation, can bring the person through like a whole maze of of experiences. And then there's the come down, right? There's the aftercare. And this is just with a scene, all right? Obviously, it's not the case of like day-to-day living, but there's there's like a whole process, right? That kind of like goes up, there's a crescendo, and then it slowly goes back down. And it's like having like an intense therapy session. Okay. And like that, like even BDSM isn't about sex. Like how, like shout out to Steve, he always says, like, the game's not about women. All right. Um, and here I am like preaching that it's not about pussy, right? It's not about achievement in like when it comes to women, like not at all. Um, like that's just a part of the whole like architecture of it. And it can be utilized, right? It can be utilized for betterment. And yeah, so it just makes sense to me, right? That I think that there's probably going to be I mean, there's always a surge, right? Every few years or something, there's like this, there's a surge in like BDSM becoming popular, and then it just kind of like fades away and people forget about it, and then it surges again. And like right now, we're kind of like in a bit of a surge, and then it's going to fall away, and won't be as trendy. Just like anything that trends, um, things come and go, right? You know, when I was a kid, everybody wanted a denim jacket, and it was really popular. And then they fell out of fashion, and then they came back a little bit in the '90s, and then they fell out again, and then they came back in like, but like ironically, so like a so like a young 20 something, they'll wear a denim jacket ironically, which is weird, but it came back, right? People are wearing them. You know, you can go into like Uniqlo and find like denim jackets, and you know, people are trying to be cool about it. Um, you know, and that's fine. But the point is that there's cycles. But but I think this is a time when these sort of things are needed. Um, you know, when we need some kind of system to help combat the the stressors and what happens to our bodies during like just living in this modern world, you know. um, and I know that there's going to be like a lot of red pill guys who are going to lambaste girls for living and you know saying well, look at the damage you're doing to yourselves. you know you know you're doing harm to your mind, you're doing harms to your body, you're doing harms to your endocrine system. It's fucking up your desire for sex, your desire for a man, desire for a husband, a family, and you know, for what? Like what's you know what's the huge payoff that's happening here? You know, this is what they'll point out, and they'll say, well, you know, they're what, your career? Okay, great. Great. You've got a career that you can you know, kind of shine and hang on the wall, right? And that's it, right? But then, you know, just like I was reading, like what at what cost? At what cost are we, you know, having all of these achievements and things like that? Like how is this affecting us as human beings? Um, I'm having some trouble here loading the chat. So I'm gonna just refresh my screen here and see what happens. Yes, reload. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yep. I just wanted to make sure that there was no questions really hanging in the rafters here. So yeah, but I think that you guys should. I know this was it was like pretty rigid and you know had its fair share of science babble mixed in there, but like just kind of look at the situation holistically, look at the entire field, because I know you guys are pissed off with women and the choices that they're making. Um, and you know, a lot of guys they want things to change, but they don't know quite how to change it. And you know, to be fair, we had systems in place to kind of prevent this sort of thing. Uh, you know, maybe our ancestors knew better, right? A long time ago. All right. Um, and we're working off of that for quite some time. And we had a modern society some decades ago that may have been less stressful. I don't know. I'm not sure. But there certainly weren't, you know, a bunch of college bound girls with many thousands of dollars in debt or hundreds of $1,000s in debt, and fending and facing the world on their own. And it's not to say that they can't do it, but with what I'm was just reading and what I've been researching is not the question of like if they can, but rather like should they? Looking at the costs involved, I'm not seeing like it seems like there's greater costs than the benefits. Okay. And maybe it's the sort of thing where it's like, well, uh, we've gone too far at this point, and we just got to see it through. And maybe that's the case. You know, maybe we need for things to get worse before it gets better, as they say. Right. Um, but there are ways, right? So before, like I was mentioning before, there was systems in place that kind of kept this stuff at bay, where there were social rules, right? Where like, women weren't able to have own homes, they couldn't have bank accounts, they couldn't enlist in the army, they couldn't start their own business, they couldn't own lands, like all these like restrictions. And then on top of that, there were these social expectations, like they need to look a certain way, sound a certain way, dress a certain way. Um, there were a lot of expectations and a lot of restrictions, and this kind of helped things out in a way. Um, if you look at that in contrast to what's going on today, and so guys are kind of you hear a lot of guys talking about the 40s and the 50s, and wanting things to go back, right? Or wanting something similar to the past. And the reality is that we don't have a time machine. We can't recreate those sort of structures. We can't just like say, all right, ladies, we're going to pass new legislation and just take away all those rights that you once had, and you're not going to be able to work anymore. You can't have bank accounts. You can't own land. You can't buy property. So the best thing for you to do if you want to survive is get married and live with your man. And there's no more no fault divorce or any of that craziness. Like we can't do that, right? We can't. It just would not go over well socially. It would cause a lot of upheaval and, frankly, probably economic fallout because governments are making tons of money on like revenue by having more than just men in the workforce, right? And just, I think for the time there was, they were probably raking it in by having men and women in the workforce. But now things are shifting. Guys are dropping out. Guys are saying, "Fuck it! Like, why bother? Why bother having work all this shit for what?" So that's an interesting shift. What do we got here? Oh, there we go. Traveling through a deep forest. That's what we're going to use. So, but the question is like, okay, so now we don't have these systems, right? We don't have these external social systems and social expectations to kind of commandeer women's mentality and behaviors. What then? All right. Well, it comes down to you as an individual. Okay. And that's where the hard part is, because if there's a large governing system sort of doing the work for you, so to speak, then you don't really have to be anything. Like you don't have to be influential. Like you don't have to be penetrative. You don't have to be grounded. You can just be a dude, and the system will take care of it for you. Like you don't have to be exceptional. You don't have to be a great guy. You could just be a guy. You could be a subpar guy. And things would be all right because the system facilitates it. Well, the system's not there anymore, right? We still have a system, but it's not like it was. And so if you want that sort of thing, you're going to have to create it. Like you're going to have to create the environment, create the system that allows whatever women are coming into your field, right, or coming into your little world, to feel a certain way, right? To feel relaxed, to feel free, to feel less emotionally burdened. And this does not mean necessarily that she doesn't work. or that she doesn't leave the house or anything like that. Like, sure, if that's what you want to make in your life, you can certainly do that. Like, I'm not the rule maker, okay? But it comes down to the the quality and the viscosity of your influence. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, it's I say it in like a blanket simplified term, but the reality is that the quality and the viscosity of your influence is is a result of a whole host of personal developments. Like, it just doesn't like come about because you choose it to be, right? You can't just choose to be influential. You can't just choose to be dominant. You can't just choose to be a leader or to provide guidance. Um, like any greater than, say, like someone can be a healer. Like anyone can go to medical school and say, all right, I'm going to become a doctor, but that doesn't necessarily make them a healer, right? Because there's some people who, like, they may be doctors but they're also healers. It makes sense with their personality. um they have a gift for caring for people and reading situations and understanding the body and the mind and all that stuff. Like, they just have a gift. And then there's other people who just kind of do it because they can. And they're like, all right, well, I'm just going to become a doctor because, like, why the fuck not? Right. Um, and so it's like that. Like, it's not just like learning some things. It comes down to who you are or who you become, like, as a man. And it's not an easy task, right? Like, I get it, guys. Like, I really get it. You're thinking to yourself, why all this like heavy shit? Like, just to have a woman in my life longer than a fucking week. Like, why do I got to do that? Right. And I would argue that you're looking at it from the lens of achieving pussy, which is largely one of the biggest problems that men have for fucking centuries, right? It's always been a problem. And so to elevate beyond like a mere male, you have to fucking develop. You have to develop beyond it. You have to develop beyond your instincts and not be just like Louis, who's lunging at the cat in the door, right? You have to be like those dogs. You ever see like those movies? It's very like campy at this point, but where there's like the bad guy, right? The rich bad guy, and he's in a white suit and he's got like diamonds rings on his fingers, and he sits in a nice big dark oak hand carved chair or whatever, and poised like statues on either side of him on these big fucking Dobermans with like spiked collars, you know? And like, if a cat walked by, if someone dropped a steak on the floor, they would be like this. Like, they would not blink. They wouldn't fucking move. They wouldn't lick their lips. They wouldn't pant. They would do absolutely fucking nothing until that central bad guy gave some sort of fucking command in Russian, and then they snap alive and they become these like just ravenous attack dogs. Like, that's where you gotta go, right? With your desire, with your lust. You can't be like Louis. Like, he's fat. Louis is a fat piece of shit, right? He likes to eat. Yeah, I'm doing my best to like not feed him so much. So he's on a diet. Um, but I got him fat, so don't blame me. All right, I'm not a bad dog owner. Um, but but the fact is that, like, yeah, he's impulsive. He is inclined to eat too much, to consume, right? Just all instinct, all raw. And it's like, how can you be treated like a man or expect to be treated like a man if you're basically acting like an evolved animal? You're not really like evolved into something beyond just your biology. And it's like, okay, cool, you've got a job and you do this and you do that, but basically you're like a hairless monkey, right? Like, going off of impulses and all this stuff. You're driven here, driven there. The bell goes off, you make a noise, this light goes off, you get a treat, you do the thing, right? And then you want to be respected as someone who's above those things simply because you want it and simply because you believe that you are the thing that you think you are. Yet you fucking go bonkers over sex. Like, um, you have so much like anger inside you, criticism, fear. You're reactive. All of this shit, and then you want to be treated like an involved man with a capital M. It's not possible. You have to be the thing in order to receive what comes from that, right? And it takes a while. It takes a while. It's likely not going to happen in your 20s. Okay. Because you're just not supposed to. Like in your 20s, you're supposed to be fumbling about in the world, taking risks, following your curiosities, following your impulses, and basically like banging your head into a few walls and, scraping your knees, breaking a few bones, making mistakes, right? Losing your money, gaining your money, having your heart broken more than once. Like that's what you're supposed to do in your 20s, like your teens and your 20s. Like this is what we do as men because that's how we figured shit out. Okay. Like like the aqueducts that were first designed in Rome, there was probably tons of failure that led up to that aha moment, right? There are tons of failures, and so you have to be willing to take L's for the sake of development, right? The whole idea like taking one for the team. Well, you want to take one for the team over and over and over, right? You want to fuck around and find out. And the bigger the fuck around, the bigger you can find out, right? High risk, high reward. Sometimes there'll be destruction. And that's just the way it goes. But it's like the problem is that like so many young men raised on the internet have consumed so much of information that tells them what the world is, mostly by guys who have nary more experience than them. So it's very odd. It's like um, blind leading the blind. Or what was that story? The shadows on the shadows on the cave wall, the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave. So, right. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the allegory of the cave by Plato. So in the allegory, Plato describes people who have spent their entire lives chained by their necks and ankles in front of an inner wall with a view of the empty outer wall of the cave. They observe the shadows projected onto the outer wall by the objects carried behind the inner wall by people who are invisible to the chained prisoners and who walk along the inner wall with a fire behind them, creating the shadows on the outer wall in front of the prisoners. The sign bearers pronounce the names of the objects and the sounds of which are reflected near the shadows and are understood by the prisoners as if they were coming from the shadows themselves. Only the shadows and sounds are the prisoner's reality, which are not accurate representations of the world. The shadows represent distorted and blurred copies of reality that we can perceive through our senses, while the objects under the sun represent the true forms of the objects that we can only perceive through reason. So, and then Socrates explains how the philosopher is like a prisoner freed from the cave and comes to understand that the shadows on the wall are not the direct source of the images seen. A philosopher aims to understand and perceive the higher levels of reality. However, the other inmates of the cave do not even desire to leave their prison, for they know no better life. And this is what I've observed for, ironically, many red pillars. Okay. So at first, they were the ones who were saying, hey, all of you blue pill motherfuckers are looking at the shadows dancing on the wall, thinking that's reality. The real reality is coming from another source, right? You're just watching the projected shadows of that reality. The real thing is over here behind the fire, um, or on like the other side of the fire. So, and that was the case for a while, right? And people were like, whoa, wow, really? Like, look at all this like interesting stuff. And then over time, what happened was the red pillars, a cave wall manifested in front of them. And then they too, what they thought they were perceiving became shadows dancing on a wall. And they're like, but think about it. Each one is convinced that they're seeing reality for as it is. For the longest time, the blue pillars, they never questioned it because they were like, this is reality. This is how things go. This is how it always has been. You know, women are sugar and spice and everything nice. Okay. And anything that deviates from that is just like an anomaly. And then that's kind of what happened with the red pillars, didn't it? Right? You guys fucking, um, your perceived reality actually became shadows dancing on the wall. And they're like, didn't question it. You're like, hey, this is the fucking reality. And the problem with that is that inexperienced guys of the world, okay, we're talking, you know, teenagers, late teens or early 20s, something like that, and they have no experience of the world, no experience of women. There's a lot, right, that they just don't have their own information on. And then they're watching this very easily accessible shit from these guys who are talking about truth, but they're actually talking about their version of the shadows dancing on the wall. And then promoting it as this is reality. All women are like that. Hypergamy, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And they're like, this is the reality. Look, let me show you this study that supports the thing that I believe, right? That's like that's called confirmation bias. Okay. Um, and then these young guys who don't know any better, it's like, oh, that sounds cool. Oh, that sounds sensible. Oh, that sounds reasonable. And then they start believing this fucking Kool-Aid drinking shit. And they don't have real experience. And because now that they've ingested all of this, nonsense, they're even less inclined to go experience the world because now the world has become a boogeyman. Women have become boogeymen. And so they're less inclined to get involved with them because they're like, I don't want this bad thing to happen. They told me about this story about this lady who murdered her boyfriend. I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm just not even going to look at girls. I mean, I'm going to jerk off like crazy over porn. But as far as like actually involving a woman in my life, no, I'm not going to do that. Like I might get stabbed in my sleep. And then she's going to use my face to open my phone and then take all of my money out of my bank accounts. It's like, and and the way things are told, right? The stories is that the anomaly is becoming the news headline, and once the news headline becomes a headline, then the idea is that it seems like it's happening all over the place, and it's easy to believe that if you're the type of guy who doesn't go outside very much because you don't travel, you don't really need to go anywhere, maybe except your job, or maybe your job is remote. You don't need a car or have a car. Um, your hobbies don't take you outside. Your hobbies are porn and video games, or like talking to people on X or whatever. Um, and so it's an increasingly compounding bad situation for guys as well. Um, and like I said before, like in the lecture, that it's highly environmental. So like really like there's and then I'm like on top of it, there's so many guys who are complaining. They're complaining about the system. And it's like, man, you're not going to change anything by complaining. Like there's two ways to change. Is like one is to basically have like a revolt, right? You have like militias and shit, and you come in and you just fucking tear apart the current system. Okay, that's one way. Highly unlikely. Or two, you change yourself, right? So you can change the system and try to be fucking Che Guevara, or you can change yourself and be something more like Neo, right? Um, and become something better, but not like richer or more more handsome or more fit or more popular. Like that's not exactly the thing. Like, yes, it's in this world, but it's not going to change who you are fundamentally. It's not going to change the problems that you carry with you. Like money, like more money solves money problems, right? Like it doesn't solve self-worth problems. It doesn't solve self-love problems. It doesn't solve like ignorance problems. You see? Um, it's not going to make you a competent leader just because you've increased your career. It's not going to create true sense of trust from a woman, like in you, uh, with just having a large bank account. It's not going to happen. Or a chiseled jawline or a six pack. Like that doesn't, like the cool things to look at by girls, but that doesn't generate desire. It doesn't generate trust. It doesn't generate openness or vulnerability. And guys who know nothing about women are like, well, who gives a shit about that? Like, I can't fuck vulnerability. you know, I can't come on the face of openness. I just want to get laid. And to that, I would say that it has everything to do with that. Like women's real sexuality, like any woman can fuck. Like any woman can just like spread her legs and let someone's dick enter her body, right? Like there's nothing complicated about it, all right? Um, but but the vulnerability, that's actually where a woman's true sexuality lies. It's hidden. It's hidden away. And it's often actually hidden away from herself because she can't even find it without the hand of another, right? Because I've said this before, you cannot bring yourself to losing control, right? Because then you're still in control because you're doing the bringing, you know. In order to truly let go, someone else has to be behind the wheel, right? It just logical. It's the only way it works out. So um, so if there's no one there that can actually do this to facilitate prime openness, prime vulnerability, prime letting go of control, then she's never really going to experience herself. Not sexually, not emotionally, not psychologically. Um, she's not going to be able to experience it, and nor will the guy. They'll both get a surface level version of her. And it might be perfectly fine. It might be totally just okay, like cool, right? No major complaints, but it's not full, right? The richness of the woman is not there, right? It's a sliver of it. It's a portion of the experience, both for herself and for the man, right? It's like I've got, my guys, they go through periods of frustration. They go through periods of frustration, despair, but also joy, understanding, triumph. But and then it keeps just going in circles, because that's the cycle of things, right? So at some point you'll be like ignorant, and then you'll start gaining some awareness, and with the growth of the awareness, you're like, damn, like I'm not as fucking knowledgeable as I thought. I'm not as cool as I thought. I can't fuck as good as I thought. I don't understand women as much as I thought. And then your education catches up with your awareness, and you're like, oh, I get it. Oh shit, I get it. I understand sex better. I understand interplay of energy better. I understand polarity better. I understand women better. I understand myself better. And then your awareness changes again, and it goes beyond your knowledge set, or your skill set. And then you realize, fuck, I have so much work to do. And then it just goes on and on and on. And that's the process. But the thing is that, you're going to have periods where your awareness grows and you feel like shit. Like you feel like you are on the bottom of the barrel. Again, right? This state of I don't know anything. And the funny part is that like that's actually the position of the master. He just accepts that he does not know anything. The difference is that he doesn't carry any judgment about it. He doesn't criticize himself. He doesn't judge himself. There's nothing there. It's just matter of fact. I know nothing. I am nothing. Um, Yet, of course, like these masters are amazing, right, in their own right. So, so my guys, they'll go through periods of despair, of shame, feeling like they should just give up. But now they're like, well, wait a second. I can't go back to sleep, right? Like I know, while I don't know everything about myself, I know enough of myself to the point where now I cannot put this down because now I realize that I'm doing it because I'm scared. I want to put it down because I'm scared, because I'm afraid of challenge. I'm afraid of what I might see or what I might learn about myself. Um, I'm afraid of how much work it'll take or how long it'll take. Um, and so I want, right? Because there's the human impulse to move away from pain and move towards pleasure. So I'm drawn to wanting to just drop it all and just try to pretend whatever and just go back to my distractions, and be fulfilled by them. But that's impossible now because with my students, they slowly like take the lid off of Pandora's box and then it vanishes. And then you're just left with this open box and you can't put the lid back on. It sort of reminds me of oh, what was his name in the first Matrix movie? He had a cool name, um, but he was the betrayer. Cipher. That's what his name was. Cipher. So Cipher betrayed everybody. Remember? And he was like meeting with one of the agents, and he's like, "Listen, I want to go back in the Matrix. I want to go, I want to be plugged back in. Like fuck the stress and the frustration and pain of reality. I don't want it. Put me back in." And he said, "What'd he say?" He's like, "Make me somebody who's important and powerful, but with very little responsibility, like an actor." He's like, "Make me famous. I want to be an actor, but I don't want any responsibility. I just want fame." So, and he's like, and make sure I don't remember a damn thing. He's like, "I don't want to remember nothing of the real world, nothing." And it's funny because like I I bet there's a ton of guys who would like to do the cipher move, and they're just like, you know what? I just want to plug in somewhere and forget that my life actually exists. Like I don't want to kill myself, right? It's not like that. It's not like these guys want to off themselves. It's more like I just don't want to fucking deal anymore. Just plug me in somewhere into this, this AR or whatever, um, and I'll just live there. I think there was like that movie Vanilla Sky, right, with Tom Cruise. There was like this. It was sort of like a Sims world, and people could get plugged in. They go into these like chambers or something, and it puts them to sleep. Whatever their consciousness like diverts into this, this sim world or whatever, and like their bodies, like the rest of the world, it was just shit. Like the real world was just shit. Like it was dirty. There's trash everywhere. It was fucked. And people just did what they needed to do to get by, and then they spent the rest of their time plugged into this world because there it was free and felt good and looked good and sounded good and smelled good and tasted good. It's like there's less burden in that virtual world. And I could see us absolutely going in that direction. It's terrible. That there's financial I'm sorry, not financial systems, governments around the world who are facing this population problem and trying to sort out like what to do because a lot of nations aren't creating enough people to sustain the infrastructure. United States is close to its tipping point, where if we go past the tipping point, that it could mean that every eligible body, like every body who could biologically get impregnated, um, if they did all at the same time and then gave birth relatively at the same time, that still wouldn't be enough humans to then grow up to balance out the population. Like that's what happens when you fall past the 2.1 children per woman to sustain the environment, to sustain the clean water, the electricity, the gas lines, the grocery stores, the farms, the roads, police force, right? All of that stuff, like everything, right? If people don't grow into people to take care of that stuff and to build new things, things just slowly start to fall apart, and people will condense into smaller, areas with more and more people. Kind of reminds me of like Blade Runner, like the first movie. It's like everyone's in LA and they're just like crammed in there, and it's fucking dark and raining all the time. uh, my teenage sci-fi's wet dream, actually. But yeah, so these governments, they're giving incentives, right? There are some of them doing cash payouts, uh, like giving women. They're like, we will pay you to get pregnant. China, China's doing a lot of stuff. One of them was very interesting, where they lifted their one child only policy. So now, because before, like if you had more than one child, you would get severely punished, to be penalized. Now they're encouraging people. They dropped that old thing, which they've had for like hundreds of years or whatever. Um, Now it's like we need you to have kids, like 2, 3 children each. Like if you can't have kids, you want to have kids, have more than one. They're giving like tax breaks. They're giving more paid leave for when babies are born. Um, there's like a whole bunch of programs that these governments are doing, and it's like, why are they doing that? Because no one's, well, not no one, but like fewer and fewer women are getting pregnant, and like that spells disaster, you know. And of course, the red pill guys will be like, well, they made the bed, and so they're gonna have to sleep in it, right? They wanted their fucking uh, wanted their independence, right? They wanted their their desire to leave their mark on the world, right? Versus like actually like having a lineage of your genetics is not enough. Um, they wanted to kind of like what, get a job, and like that's leaving their mark, you know? Like that's no, they're gonna forget that you were, I don't know, had some fucking important job in some building in some city that will be completely lost to history, right? Like eventually, like all of us are going to be forgotten completely. Like you realize like how many people existed on this planet, like prior to you. There's only some people that remember them. And because after a while, unless like your family's like really diligent about recording the people that were in lives, and there's some families who are like that. Um, and there's some families that are like that, and they record the people that were in their history, and you can trace things back very far. Because people were, taking photos and keeping records and all that stuff. But a lot of people aren't doing this. You know, um, And but we're all going to get forgotten. And it's like, well, what did you speed that up for? What, so you could fucking have a career? Like, I don't get it. But it's not a single thing, right? It's not a like a single cause or a single problem, right? Because the red pillars or whatever you want to fucking call them these days, they will ignore the male side of these things, right? Because it's like, oh, so you don't want like women to do this thing and like have all the stress, the cortisol, the drop in the fucking fertility, drop in sexual desire, increase in stress, and all this bullshit, and how that's affecting society and this, that, and the other. Like, it looks like there's like a lot of stuff on the side of girls, and that stuff's true, but they always like just never include themselves, right? And say like, well, how am I part of this problem? You know, because the fact of the matter is that if you want a thing to phase into becoming liquid, right, then it requires a suitable container. And guys these days can barely lead themselves. They can barely lead themselves. I would put money on today's 20 something to fail at getting himself out of a paper bag. That's how poorly they lead themselves. I mean, look who is worshipped on social media, right? That kid clavicular. Like that's like who's popular. And for like good and bad reasons. Like it's not all because of like the things he's trying to do, but also, the degeneracy and all that bullshit, you get you collect more fly. Well, they say collect more flies with honey than you do shit, but if you're using honey and shit, then you can collect a lot of flies. And I think that's kind of what's happening there. But it just goes to show you like what is being promoted, what's being worshipped, what's being used to make a lot of money. And it's shameful, right? It's shameful that this is like, I don't know, to me he seems like the outcropping of what happens when black pill and red pill manifest into a physical person. Like, as a result of consuming all of that information for years. And say, well, what do I got to do about it? I know. I'm going to hit my face with a hammer. I'm going to do a bunch of drugs. I'm going to fucking do dumb shit. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, all in the quest for validation. And then you contrast that with, say, like my grandfather, who could care fucking less about anyone's validation except his wife, his kids, his grandkids, brothers, possibly a boss if there's respect there. And that's it. Like, basically, like you could fit in like two handfuls, right? You got like two handfuls. And that's the amount of people that he would respect enough to consider their opinions and how they felt about him. And like, that's all that matters. Like, just your blood and your closely trusted people. But what's happened to guys? They've been splintered, right? Their minds, their consciousness has been fractured and scattered about the internet. And it just makes you so damn susceptible. The young man of today in his 20s, he's softer than baby shit and more violent than a Wolverine. It's like a terrible combination. Absolutely terrible. Uh, you can always come across them. Like, you come across these guys on X, and if you get into like a little back and forth with one of these dudes, it very quickly escalates. It very quickly turns into personal attacks. Um, attacks of your character, ad hominem stuff, and and it's like like obviously you're not arguing with a guy in his 60s or his 50s or his mid to late 40s. It's you're not. You're probably arguing with a 20 something who's just completely socially inept. And there's no safeguards, there's no boundaries, no principled living, not doing anything in any sense that would cause another person who's not related to look up to them and say, like, I feel this guy. There's something going on with him, or I want to know him more. I respect him, and it's not because he fucking opened up a nightclub, you know. Um, it's which was such a dumb idea for that kid to open a nightclub, or at least put a nightclub in his name. Um, if you do any research into nightclubs and bars, their numbers declining like rapidly. Like no one's going to nightclubs anymore. They're kind of stupid. And a lot of clubs. Like in the next few years, you're going to find a lot of nightclubs just shutting down, like across the United States. I don't know how it'll fare in the like in Europe, Asia, and so on. But in the U.S., a lot of clubs are going to be shutting their doors, as they have been since COVID, basically. Um, but yeah, so I guess my greater point is that yes, that larger system a long time ago was great. All right, it created a situation that facilitated families, neighborhoods, and all these like little cells around with the nucleus and the whole thing. But and that's changed. So the only way to create that is to, if that's something you want, is to not. Well, you don't have a system, but you have to basically create your own system. So it's like once she comes into that field, there's social expectations, right? There's relational expectations. There's desires. There's laws. There's things you can and you can't do, right? So it's the same structure that was external, right? But now you take the basic idea and you bring it inward. So it's like once you're in my field, there's this similar sort of stuff. There's the expectations, laws, how you should talk, how you should behave, how you should dress, right? Like, I make this very clear for girls who want to get involved with me, that it's not just like, oh, I want to have sex with you, so just come as you are. As long as you keep it consistent and keep opening your legs, you can just stick around. Like that's like the main crux of like most relationships. Okay. Like there's no order at all. And then like shit comes up, as everything does in life. There's things come up, and now it turns into kind of just a whole lot of bullshit because there's no polarity, there's no structure, there's no authority. It's either like both man and woman have authority, or neither of them have any authority, and they're both equally as terrible. Like it works out so much better when there's one leading and one following. And like one of my guys, I've been helping him chat with this girl through a dating app, and she's a bit of a pain in the ass. It's kind of funny, like how much she like plays around, and it's got a little bit of a assertiveness, and but also still flirty. It's just like aggressive flirty. And that's fine. And that's not what I'm into. And that's not what he's into. But I'm like, you know what? It's not about getting her in bed. Okay. Like you have sex. Like you don't have a problem getting laid. And your problem is that you have difficulty sitting in the tension, sitting in anticipation and ambiguity, and feeling her assertiveness. Like you have problems with that. Like you want to run away. Like it feels offensive to you. And that's fine, right? I'm not telling you like you shouldn't feel these things, but I was telling him was like your goal isn't to like end that as quick as possible so you can get to a place where your emotions are safer. It's more about staying in it, staying in the back and forth, right? And get comfortable with that. All right. And say whatever it is that's, you want to say and try to, because what she was doing is she was constantly bringing it back into her framing. Like she was reframing things, which would then put her in the authority position. And then, like, I would say, all right, now tell her this. And it would reframe it back into, onto my side. Right. And so, yes, I was speaking for him. Like he was just like saying what I was saying, but not as like a crutch, but more so he was allowed to see that interplay, right? But man, I tell you what, this does not happen in other countries. It doesn't. Maybe Europe, I'm not sure. I haven't like talked to girls in Europe in a long time. But I would say South America, Asia, Southeast Asia, nope. Like this kind of attitude is, I wouldn't say it's not existent, but it's it's not common. It's not common in the slightest. And just once again, like if you like the challenge, you like your food to fight back, you know, to kind of brace themselves and stuff. Cool. Like if you're into that, like by all means, like I actually know, well, not know currently, but I knew a guy who was like that. And he loved like a feisty woman who like had a sword of her own. And they would like get into it, like because he liked that. He didn't like just nice, quiet, soft, submissive, like pushover type of girls who are just like, okay, like whatever you want to say, like whatever you want, master. Right? That's what I want. That bored him. Like he liked that feisty like battle, with his woman. And that's fine, like personally, like that would, to me, that this is like taking too much time. If it was me on the app dealing with a girl like that, the conversation would have been over a long time ago. Okay. But there's so much to learn from it, like about oneself, that it's like, no, no, no. Stay in the game. Stay in the game. Stay there and feel that tension and learn how to like redirect it, like an Aikido master. All right, so I'm gonna just look at these couple of comments and and then we'll bounce out of here. How'd you go about curating charisma? Well, it's not something you put on; it's something that you are. So I would say become charismatic. Like, how would you curating charisma? Like putting art on a wall. I used to curate galleries, and that's what we do. We put art up on the wall. So you can't put charisma up on the wall and consider yourself charismatic. You have to become charismatic, right? So, um, positive disintegration. Yes. All right, what's going on here, Uncle Guns? Poland implemented tax-free status for life for children of 7 or more. Holy shit. Tax-free status for life. All these countries had to do is reinstate the patriarchy. No, but that's not going to work. It's not going to work. They would cause massive upheaval if they were just like, hey, you know what, ladies? You no longer have the right to vote. You can't have a bank account. You can't, like, we revoke your driver's license. We revoke your ability to own land. Like, yes, it could be done, but holy fuck, the upheaval. Not to mention the economic fallout from having women not working. But maybe the governments would just be like, all right, well, you can work. Well, we'll take away your jobs, but you can't do anything with the money that we we give you. You can't put it into a bank, and you can't buy a car. You can't buy a home. You can't take out a loan. That's it. So we'll just like give you a wad of cash in your hand at the end of the day, and just send you home. Yes, X can be toxic, but I've also met some like really fucking cool people there. Just whining, complaining, and citing the same endless statistics year after year. Yeah. But I met so I'm oh no, I'm sorry. I met a really cool guy. He's um I don't know if I should share his real name because he's going to be coming on the show to talk. And because he and I we align on so much. Like it's so rare that I come across a guy who's on the same wavelength that I'm on. But he has like a main submissive. He has two girlfriends. He has like he left the United States. Like COVID hit, he was like, "Fuck this place, I'm out." And he went to Mexico, bought some lands there, and he's been like building like a homestead and he wants to build like a bunker, I think like an underground bunker, um, and have like prepared with like everything you need for like 10 years of survival or some shit. Um, but his mindset around like men and women and sexuality, he's also into BDSM, um, and but I'm gonna have him on here, and so I met him through X, and it was granted for every one of him, there's like 10,000 people who are the opposite, who are just absolutely awful, very low IQ, very emotional, or pretending to be, which is very weird. It's like this whole like troll thing has to fucking stop because it just indicates that you're afraid to be authentic, right? And he said, no, 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 no. I'm not afraid. I just like fucking with people. Uh-huh. Sure. Nightclubs were boring when I went into them. Never saw the appeal. Yeah, you gotta have like a party sort of mentality. I've been to a couple of cool nightclubs, but it's really the same stuff. I mean, like how different can they possibly be? You've got alcohol, music, dancing, men and women. Like it doesn't really get too much more complex than that. But I did go to this place called House of Yes, and like here in Brooklyn, and it's not exactly a nightclub, but it's also not exactly a performance space. It's sort of like a mix of the two. And of course, they're very inclusive there, the House of Yes. So, they've got like everybody. They've got like straight, gay, bi, trans, queers, like they just like everybody. And they have like all kinds of like costume parties but like they fucking know how to party, right? And they put on like elaborate performances and like those scarf, what is it called? Scarf or like silk, those acrobatics where there's like a fabric that hangs down from the ceiling and the woman like kind of like wraps herself up into it and spins around and does flips and things like that, like all based on like these silk like tapestries and shit. I don't know what it's called, but they do that stuff with like costumes, very like almost like a low grade Cirque du Soleil meets a nightclub, and really interesting. But for the most part, it's like meatheads, bitches, and bimbos like going to the clubs trying to fuck, you know. But yeah, I hear that they're really struggling because just people are just not doing that anymore. Like the dudes have aged out that used to go, and the same with the women, and the young ones, they just don't care. They're just like, why the fuck would I do that? I got my PS5. Why do I need to go to a nightclub? You know, let's see here. Hey, little one. Good to see you here, kiddo. All right. So, yeah, in South Korea, there's an octopus's food that actually does actively fights back as you eat it. An octopus's food that actively fights back as you eat it. Oh, like you're eating the octopus and it's trying to not be eaten? Is that what you're saying? I don't get that. So, many states that outlawed fetus deletion also implemented automatic 50-50 are thriving. Yep, two of them offering tax cuts for families. First state to do all that plus outlaw birth control will win. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've got a friend, my friend Glenn Lawrence. He devised this whole really well thought out proposal, um, with things like that you mentioned, guns, as well as like reforming divorce laws and marriage laws to be actually equanimable, and so there would be no more weight on either side for anything. And it really, like, the way he like really thought this out very well, where like no one can screw over the other person and create leverage. So I think like with that, plus what you're just suggesting here, guns, you could turn things around, but it's just going to require. I think it can't be federal. I just think like some states are going to be like, hey, you know what? This is what we're doing here. And then there could be like divisions, like how there's like North and South Korea. There could be like East and West United States, or go back to like a North South United States, or maybe we'll have quadrants, right? And the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, and the Southwest, and it just be like these little republics that are in there. And it's like, well, we think this way and we think that way and so on. It's like, all right, well, you want to live a certain way, you're going to have to go move to the laws that exist in like the Southwest of the United States. And that would be its own little region, where they've kind of band together with certain mindsets and certain laws. Oh, shit. That's crazy, dude. Trying not to be eaten. Huh. Well, that's interesting. I'm sure that that has some sort of parallel to what we were talking about, but I'm at a loss for words. I'm like, okay, cool, man. Never knew about that. Never knew about that. Um, yeah, I want to shout out my girl here. She has been doing very well with you being helpful and integrating herself more into the BDSM world, but in her way, which is really great. Uh, she's a I won't reveal like what she does, but it's very much aligned with doing research, and so she's taken like her natural inclinations and applied it to our lifestyle. So it's like applying like herself in her own way to what's going on, and has been producing like really well thought out, researched and written research papers on various topics in BDSM. And so what I've been doing is posting those. Is it one or two now? I can't remember, that I posted to my Substack. Okay, so if you want to read some really interesting research about like the finer details, scientifically or socially about what's going on in like power dynamics and things like that, go check out my Substack. It's just Substack, and then you can go there and just search the Dominance Academy, and my profile will come up, and just look at the posts. Currently, I think she's researching and writing right now a piece about the interplay between submissives in power dynamics and ADHD. Because like it's funny, like the more I research ADHD, um, the more people I come across that have it. It's a coincidence, and it's like that. Oh fuck, what's that phenomenon? But there's a phenomenon for that. Like if you're doing some research into like a new car that you're interested in, and then you start seeing that car everywhere. Same idea. It has a name. I don't remember. Um, but yeah, it's just an interesting topic. Like ADHD. I didn't realize so much about the about that type of brain, and it apparently there's a lot of submissives who are neurodivergent and have ADHD. And what's interesting, and I'm sure it's going to come up, but just this idea of how structure and power dynamics can help regulate ADHD, which often gets like really scattered, and they're very much like in the now. So like setting things up for the future, like, oh, if you do this, then this might happen. Like that's kind of, I think, hard to process sometimes, or many times, versus if there's like an immediate repercussion or immediate reward, then it's like that thing can be done and like done very well, like with great focus or whatever. So I don't know. But anyways, I just kind of want to shout out her good work. She's been much more involved in that respect, and I'm proud of her. Iceberg got a question here, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Is the archetype coach? Just you can start calling me professor. I'm joking. Is the archetype of the brat a BDSM specific thing, or can you encounter those women outside of the lifestyle? Absolutely. Yeah. Um, all of these things exist outside of the lifestyle. You know what I mean? We just put names on things because it's just easier to understand and so on. Most of the guys that I know who are veterans of the lifestyle, they don't even use titles. They're just like, yeah, I'm just me here. Clearly they're this or that, but they just don't bother with categorization. But yeah, I was just describing earlier tonight one of my clients who is talking with a girl on some dating app, and she's clearly a brat. Clearly. Okay. Now, I don't know if she identifies as one, but she absolutely is one. Like, she likes to kind of stand her ground. She likes to put her toe or her whole fucking foot over the line. And during the dialogue, whenever I would instruct him to kind of like take the framing back and assert like who's in control of the conversation, she would then flip the words and then recontextualize it so the framing goes back onto her side. And I kept having to like kind of steer things back, and then she kind of playfully bring it over here, and then I'd steer it back, she'd playfully bring it back. And it was all done like in, good-hearted fun. There was nothing really rude about it. Um, but so yeah, she was absolutely like that, because that's what brats do. They like to challenge authority. They like to challenge hierarchies and things like that. Um, and because they like to feel the intensity of domination. Okay. And well, I'd say like all subs do, but their way is they want to feel it very overtly, and like they want to be bested. They want to be bested either, psychologically, or emotionally, physically, something. They want to be put in a compromising position where they became so, in their brattiness, that they get placed in a situation where it's compromising. Like, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't catch 22 situation. They're like, fuck, damn, he's good. Like, I have no recourse other than to obey because he's bested me. Like, there's plenty of girls who are like that, you know. And there's plenty of guys who are turned on by that. They love that sort of energy play. And they're called brat tamers. Like, they get invigorated by trying to win that tennis match and say, all right, now kneel. You have no other choice to, because I just kicked your ass, like, in whatever way, and showed you that I'm better, I'm stronger, more resilient, I'm smarter. Um, and some of them, they really thrive off of that. Okay. For me, I don't. For me, it's an annoyance. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with brats or bratty behavior. It's just, and I know how to handle it, but in so by handling it, it drains me. So if it's intermittent, that's perfectly fine, because that actually invigorates me, because I do have a sadistic side. So if there's a little bit of acting up, then that gives me the opportunity to express that sadism. But for the most part, I like a well-oiled machine. I like obedience. I like smoothness. I don't like disruptions. Okay. I don't like disruptions in my kingdom. Uh, like, hearing yes, sir, or how may I serve you today, sir, is like one of the fucking sexiest things in the world. But but other guys, they're like, for them to hear make me is the sexiest thing in the world for them to hear. So everybody's, guys are different, doms are different. They like that, but for me, it's like I like it every once in a while. It's not anything that I thrive off of. So, good question. Yeah. All of these things existed before there was BDSM. It just kind of grew, and then we're like, oh, like let's kind of like organize things and kind of parse it out so we can like see and understand and categorize and like, oh, okay, all right. So all of this like starts making sense now. But all of this shit existed long before. There's even like old pottery from like ancient Rome where they would like do like illustrations on the sides of pots, and it would show like orgies with like people getting whipped at the same time. Like it would show like a girl like sucking a guy's dick while another guy is standing behind her like whipping her ass, and it's like, okay, like clearly this stuff has been going on for a long fucking time, dude. So, but I hope the lecture was good for you. The talk afterwards was good for you. Helped you understand that like what's going on with girls is it's multifaceted, and some of it's out of their control. Some of it is from getting sold a bad bill of goods where they were promised a certain thing, they were coerced or manipulated into a certain thing, and then it turns out that it's worse than the benefits involved. But now they're too far in, and there's no turning back. Um, and others, they will turn that into a superpower. They'll lean into it and say, "Oh, this isn't a bad thing. This is actually a superpower. This is a good thing." Because sometimes when people don't have any other choice, they take that bad thing that's in their life that they can't change, and they recontextualize it to make themselves feel better about the thing that they can't change. And they say, no, 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 this doesn't mean that bad thing that you all think. No, 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 this actually means something special. Like I am extra special. I am this, now in that context, it's like I am, a strong, independent woman, right? And because it's like to admit the other side or to admit the opposite or to admit that that's a problem or that you don't like it when you don't have any other choice but to accept it because that's just now your station in life, that would be soul crushing, wouldn't it? Like it would be sitting and admitting like, fuck, I have become a prisoner of my own design or my own choices or my own ignorance or my own naivete. That sucks, right? And so who wants to have that kind of like really visceral misery? It's easier to just say, no, I'm going to lean in and turn this into something that I'm proud of. Because frankly, there's no other choice. It's like either that or misery. So I'll go with Dunning-Kruger. I'll go with blowing up my own ego to kind of sedate the pain, right? But it is what it is now, right? So all the more reason why, guys, if you want to kind of change that for yourself, change that for not women, but the girl who's in your life, it can absolutely be achieved, right? By creating the containment, creating the systems that used to regulate girls externally, but now it's just internal, right? Instead of being outside the state, it's now inside the state. So, again, if anybody has any questions, you can go to my website, thedominanceacademy.com, hit the contact, and it shoots me an email. You'll get responded to within 12 to 24 hours. And if you have any questions about my coaching, you can also set up a call either through the website or you can shoot me an email. We'll discuss certain things, whatever you need to talk about. And then go to the tutorials. Lots of great information there where you can learn about a single subject or a single skill set. And, instead of the meandering that we do here on the lives. And those are all competitively priced. You can grab a whole bunch of them for, for about the same amount as you spend on a pizza. So, all right. So there's that. Thank you for joining me here this evening. I appreciate your company. And thank you for watching this on the replay. I appreciate you as well. So until next time, we'll see you later.